And we're live. Hello and welcome to our show, Get Me Someone Who Can Sell. And today I have a treat for y'all. I've got Rob Lime with me. Rob is a partner at Lucian Associates, and I've known Rob for, I guess, a couple years now. And Rob has an interesting background. So I'll tell you a little bit about Rob. He comes from kind of creative background. He loves music, he loves museums, but he's also a really incredible sales rock star. So it kind of shows you that you can be into anything and still be amazing at sales. So I have a lot of questions for Rob today. Rob has helped a lot of companies scale their sales teams and increase the revenue, fix all kinds of revenue problems. So he's going to be talking with a lot of experience today. So, and I'm here for that. I want you guys to have practical tips and applications on how to get your sales growing and in the right direction. I'm Olga Pichnenko, and I'm the host of the show, which I always forget to say. So Rob, before we get started, do you want to say a couple words?
Just pleased to be here. Olga, thanks for inviting me. Welcome, everybody. Let's go.
And Rob, you work at Lucian. So, and for those of you who don't know that, Lucian is one of the most premier Sandler franchises in the country. Like, if you want to work with somebody like in the United States, like this is the place to go. I mean, they're so good. They've got a ton of partners there. And you started there just like as associate, right? And then you got promoted all the way to now you're a partner there. So clearly you know what you're doing, because it's a very you got to have really thick skin to kind of get promoted in that environment, because a lot of people don't make it. So with that said, I have a first question for you. What interested you about sales, and how did you think you were going to be any good at it?
So you brought up that I have a background. I was going to be a music teacher. It was the first thing I was ever exceptional at. But then when I started to enter adulthood, I figured out how the economy works. And, I mean, it's like mostly, not to get like political, it's like mostly a free market economy in the United States. Most people are into that. And when you provide value, there's certain things that the economy values and certain things that it doesn't value. It's not right, but unfortunately, we don't value teachers that much. And I remember thinking, I don't want to not make any money, and I don't want to live in rural areas. And I ended up in sales, how everybody else ends up in sales, completely accidentally. No one goes to Northwestern or UCLA or an Ivy League school and then ends up in selling software. So like we all end up here on accident, like trying to bridge a gap. And so I was trying to bridge a gap. And then the more that I learned about, human behavior is very predictable. Salespeople are disproportionately, the salespeople have an opportunity to provide
Mhm.
disproportional value in their businesses. And so they're rewarded for that disproportional value financially. That works for me. I can like work less, make more money, kind of have some fun, all by just having conversations. And so stopgap, a couple different places, got a little traction in my late 20s. And then, by the time I was 28 or 29, I was like, I think this is a career. So now here we are.
So hold on. So you, how did you know that you were going to be good? Because like you don't have on your profile like what you did before Lucian, but I think I may have found it. It was that Angels List. Is that
Mm-hmm.
right? Did I dig it out?
Yeah, that was where I met. So that's where I was introduced to Lucian Sandler through
Okay.
Aaron,
And
who's
so
the president.
how long were you at Angels List?
Like 5 years, right
Okay.
around back in the old school, right around to the time when they became a public company. That's right
Wow.
about when I bailed.
And
Yeah.
for those of you who are watching, like it's pretty, like 5 years at Angels List. That's pretty admirable, because like it's the culture of like you gotta really perform to stay there, to like really be there, right? I mean, because they've got
Yeah.
sales culture, they've got sales training. Obviously, did they use Lucian?
Some of us did.
Oh.
Aaron showed up and did training, and some of us took it seriously, and some of us didn't. And
So
I took it
the company invested in sales
right,
training. Okay, all
right.
right, okay. That's
I took it. I took it pretty seriously. I remember thinking I could do. I didn't. So this is for those of you who don't know anything about the business. Angie's List was aggregating reviews before anyone else was, before Google was aggregating reviews. And essentially, it wasn't SEO, but if you think of SEO marketing, you pay to be listed first. That was kind of the gig on the Angie's List website. So we were selling an advertising product,
Uh-huh.
and we were making a lot of cold calls. And anybody that knows anything about advertising and media, the month turns over the month turns over on the 31st, and you get paid for what closes by the 31st. And then you start from zero on the first. That's how most media and ad sales works,
Yep.
right? And I remember hating that, hating the idea that I was going to work until. So it's like, what could I do that's like more predictable? Like, what's a set of behaviors? What's a way of being? What's a way of selling? That provides predictability, so that I don't hate my life 1 month or 1 week out of every month, because I'm just dying to get a bunch of crap in my pipeline that's probably not any good across the finish line. And Aaron and Lucian and Sandler and all that provided that, where I would get ahead of my goal and then walk out the last day to close the business at 4 p.m. because I was already ahead, because I was doing my behavior daily. I was asking the right questions early enough. I was doing it in a way that, for those of you who have like a really predictable sales model where you hit your goal every month, like doing those things
No,
versus the spaghetti selling. What can I
right.
throw against the wall? Hopefully it closes.
Right. Makes sense. So you were good at Angie's List, clearly. You stayed there for a while. Did you get promoted there? Like what was your story there?
No. The deal there was they had a pretty nice comp plan,
Mm-hmm.
and your paychecks always cleared.
Okay.
And you could go from nobody to making 100K like overnight just by doing the work. But you were never really building a lot of equity in the
Mm-hmm.
company. Like, I could tell, like, I'm in a business now where I have a lot of personal equity. Someone in my family could get sick. I could disappear for 3 months, and my office would be there when I came back, and I'd probably even get paid for work that I didn't do. Right? I have personal equity in the business I'm in now. I wasn't able. I don't blame anybody for this, but the deal was you really couldn't build personal equity. So, like, becoming a manager or kind of growing in roles. And
Mm-hmm.
those of you who have been promoted to manager, that if you were a top 10, top 20 seller, you probably made less money when you got promoted, right? And so it just didn't quite fit. That wasn't my path. I just made it work until, it's time to find something different.
Yeah. So
So
so one of the things we talk about in the show is that the audience here is CEOs and sales leaders who are watching us.
yeah,
And they're really the point of this, and this is why I started doing this, is to show what does somebody who knows how to sell, what do they sound like, what do they talk about, what do they not talk
yeah,
about? Because I want them to start seeing what does the rock star look like and sound like versus like not, because we all know what not probably looks like, but very
yeah,
rarely people know what the rock star looks like. And here's why I'm asking you all these questions, because I know you're going to give me the straight answers about stuff. That's one of the first things you want from the sales rep, is like, how vague are they or how clear are they? Like, look at Rob.
right,
Who remembers the comp, this and this and this? They can tell the story using numbers or some kind of facts versus just like throwing things at you of like, that doesn't really make sense. So one of the things that Rob was already demonstrating with us, and I did not really prep him for anything, is that he's already telling a story using numbers or facts of some sort. And this is what you want to do when you are interviewing a sales rock star. That's just kind of like, I like giving little tidbits for people to like, okay, clearly everybody wants a Rob on their team. So how did you transition to go to Lucian? How did that happen? What was your
I just had to get comfortable with the risk. So it's when you think of any kind of entrepreneurial professional services, no leads provided, kill, hunt and kill, and eat only what you hunt and kill. There's just a lot of risk. I should have done it earlier. But there's just risk to that, which now I look back at where I am now and the risk that I took. It's pretty minimal. I mean, there's a lot of entrepreneurs going, buddy, you think that's risk? I put $500,000 into this business and failed for 6 years. So a lot of you, but in my kind of teeny little bird entrepreneurial brain at the time, it felt like a lot of risk to me to take a pay cut and to know that that pay cut was going to last for years, not months or weeks. And so I just had to get comfortable with the risk. And I just, I was convinced that, we have there's a lot of credibility in this
Yep.
organization. I had personal capital built up with some people in these four walls, and I just was really convinced there is a place that I can get to that is the top of the mountain for me. I don't know when I'm going to get there. If I just don't quit, if I go do this thing and just don't quit, I'm going to get to that place, right? And then it was like, all right, I'll do it. I'll do
So
it, whatever it takes.
So what results did you see? Let's talk about you kind of being this good student of Lucian when you were at Angels List. Like you talked about taking it seriously. So what does that
Right.
mean, taking that investment that a company made, right, into sales training? Like what does that mean? And what does that look like? Because you said those who did well, and those who
Well,
didn't.
let me answer your question about results. So, um, it's not always a two-way corollary, but most elite salespeople win fast and lose faster. Okay, so most you can lose slowly and win slowly and find a way to be successful. But most elite salespeople, especially those that are selling formulaically or systematically, or elite organizations that scale great performance beyond one or two individuals, lose fast, win faster. And if you look at media sales, we were trying to get 10 transactions a month, maybe, right? 10 transactions a month, 30-day or less sales cycle. That's a lot of work. And my time was very valuable. And also, I didn't get a base salary. And so minutes that I was spending chasing around crap that never was going to close were minutes that I should have invested either finding stuff that will close or not at work, at home, relaxing or spending time with my wasn't my wife at the time, but my now wife. Didn't have kids back then, but maybe my wife, the dogs, or going to the gym or something. And so, like the real life results of any system, any great consultative sales system, is you find out you have the guts and you find out a way to disqualify opportunities that have no chance at closing. So you spend as close to zero time as possible with people that aren't going to pay you in a reasonable period of time in a margin that works for you. And then the people that you close them faster than you would have if you weren't selling so formulaically or systematically. And then with your time rebate, you either work less or you make more money because you have more time to be productive and find more stuff that you can win fast or lose fast on.
Okay. So you noticed that since you started, you because sales training wise, was Sandler kind of your first official sales training, or
It
did you?
is. Yeah, it
So,
was.
so what did
I
you
didn't know
start
anything. I
Yeah.
didn't know
So
anything.
what did
Yeah.
you? It was the same thing for me when I started
Right.
learning Sandler. I had no idea what I was doing. So tell me about like what did you notice as you started implementing things, because that's
Uh, equal
super important.
business, equal business stature, and the right to challenge, right? Like we tend to think of sales, if you default in sales, you tend to think of the customer is always right retail scenarios. And we think that that should be the way of behaving or way of being. You cannot lose fast if you're not on equal business stature, if you don't believe in the right to challenge. Any of you who knows anything about Sandler knows about negative selling or negative reversing, where sometimes the best thing to do is to try to get the prospect to tell you no. And then they'll either tell you no and you lose faster, or they'll talk you out of it. And now they'll start to move with some momentum. And one of the first things I ever learned was people will tell me that they want a quote or a proposal to get me off the phone, not because they actually want a quote or a proposal. But if you don't know any better and you have happy ears, and you go, "Oh, almighty prospect wants a quote or a proposal. Oh my God, I'm so excited. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I'll send that over by Tuesday." And then I spend the next 3 weeks calling you. You never answer, right? If instead you go,
Never happens to anybody else.
right, right. And instead you go, "Hey, Olga, don't get me wrong. Like, I would love if this conversation gets to the point where it makes sense for me to quote or propose, but we're not quite there yet. Can I ask you a couple questions to see even if you have any of the challenges that we're expert at fixing?" And if you go, "No, that doesn't work," great. I just saved my time, get out of my life. No writing a proposal, no following up with someone who has no interest. Or that's a nice moment of influence for somebody who was trying to get rid of you.
Mhm.
And then you show up with equal business stature and some guts and you go, "Should we talk about the kinds of challenges that we help solve?" And you go, "You know what? Hang on, let me step out of this room. Maybe we should." Perfect. So I tend to work with business owners who are struggling or frustrated with one of a couple things. And now you turn it into a legit conversation where if you do a proposal, if you do a quote, if you do some kind of fulfillment, the person's qualified, very likely to buy from you, or at least you're going to get an answer from them, like in a timely, in a business sort of timely fashion.
So I bet that changed your. Did that change your close rate? I don't want to assume it,
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
did you notice that your commissions started growing or deals? What did you notice on the bottom line? Like what kind of changes happened?
Yeah, I probably doubled. I probably doubled pretty quickly. Your close rate shoots through the roof because you have less stuff to close. So you have less stuff in your pipeline because everything in your pipeline is gold. None of it's crap. So you don't have a pipeline full of crap. All the stuff in your pipeline has a reasonable chance to close. So you propose the less stuff, which of course mathematically increases your ratio, and then your ratio actually goes up because the stuff that you propose to, you only propose or present for the kill. You know reasonably that you're going to close it, unless if something weird happens, you're going to close it. And so you're not disqualifying people in or out by the answer that they give you once you've presented, proposed, done a demo, something like that. You're disqualifying people in and out like in that first conversation.
Right. So just
So,
by tweaking that one thing, asking those tough questions, and like being on the, you said, on the equal stature, right? So
right,
right there, that's a nugget that I bet is very helpful for your clients to see and implement. I bet.
right.
And so in terms of you, so we call it need for approval, right? When people don't ask those tough questions, they want to be liked, not respected. Was that
Right.
easy for you, or did you have to really like? What did you have to do to get there, or was it like automatic? You're like, oh, got it. I'm gonna start doing that now, or did you really have to kind of get to that
Yeah,
point?
everybody's a little different. Everybody's a little different. And I think everybody has a range of what's easy and what's challenging, right? So one of the things, if we fast forward to like a year ago or 2 years ago, one of the things that you look at me and you generally go that this is the guy who could sell with a low need for approval, but there are still some people, at least in recent memory, that are kind of outside of that range that I find myself having a need for approval from, right? So back then there was my range was a little bit different than it is now. Like a story
Oh.
I could tell you was, I had a nice referral conversation with somebody that one of my clients knew through a strategic coach, and I'm asking him some questions, and he's talking about some of his assets, and this asset's 100 million and this asset's 200 million. And pretty quickly I was like, you're a billionaire, aren't you? In my brain I go, this is a billionaire. And there's this lower middle class child version of me going, you don't belong in conversations with billionaires, right? There's that voice that could win out. And thankfully, this conversation happened in recent memory where I'm kind of past that phase of my life where I go, I don't need his approval. I don't care if he's a billionaire. I have this one particular subset of experience or knowledge that he doesn't have as it relates to sales and managing people and hiring salespeople and those kinds of things. So I don't have a need for approval in this moment. As an example of how that could grow. But yeah, back in the day, I can't say when I was 27 years old and I was talking to any kind of business owner. I mean, sometimes that did get on top of me. One of the ways that need for approval can impact you and show up too is people outside. I don't want to get too in the weeds, but some of you know what
Mhm.
DISC profiling is. People that are opposite of your disc profile are hard. It's hard for you to be likable to them, and it's hard for you to find them likable immediately unless if one of the two of you adapts. And that's an example of why isn't this person finding me likable? I should become more subservient. I should sort of bow to my need for approval instead of just following the process.
Yeah,
So
and need for approval for those who are watching. That's like one of the things you have to watch out when you're hiring somebody, because if they have it, you gotta coach on that. No one is gonna be perfect and amazing, and no matter what kind of sales training you give them, if you're not coaching that mindset of the need for approval, um, they will crumble under pressure if they want approval of somebody, and that's
let me
basically.
say something. You just tagged on something, Olga. I'm gonna make a larger
Yeah,
point if you don't mind me chasing a
do
rabbit
it,
for a second.
do it.
One of the best things that So there's some stuff that Sandler brings to the sort of sales training ethos that there's some consultative selling methodologies that bring some of the same things. But I think one thing that's unique about Sandler that it brings to the sales training ethos, and you guys can Google this, the success triangle. So the success triangle is the equilateral triangle. One corner is a B for behavior. One corner is a T for technique. One corner is an A for attitude. And attitude to me expands into belief systems and mindsets and ways of being. And I think need for approval lives in attitude. And so we're talking about the A corner of the success triangle specifically through need for approval. And the lesson that I hope that CEOs and managers and people that are in charge of developing and coaching salespeople can take out of this is, okay, behavior is the things that we do every day. Technique is the way that we do the things that we do every day. So for instance, prospecting salespeople make cold calls. So how do they make cold calls? What does their 30-second commercial sound like? What kind of questions do they ask? And your instinct is to coach to behavior and technique. But if you leave out all the stuff that's going on in between their ears, you're gonna fail. Like you could teach somebody to ask really great questions because you're banging on technique, and then they get in front of their prospect, but their need for approval takes over, and they go, "Oh God, I got to be liked. I find this question to be challenging, or to be off-putting, or to be inappropriate." And you're training, and then they don't do any of that stuff in practice. Well, good for you for handling behavior, good for you for handling technique. But if you ignore what's going on in between our ears, if you ignore the attitude part of when you put those three things together, then you get success. You're not going to get very far. You're going to go nowhere. And a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders bang their head into behavior and technique and go, why can't my people get it? Well, there's probably some kind of self-limiting belief. There's probably some kind of attitudinal way of being. That's the thing that's actually in their way, right?
Yeah.
That's preventing them from being successful.
Yeah, a need for approval is actually something that some people will be like, "This is how I am," and it's like they're not even aware that that's
Right.
like it can be coached. So what Rob is talking about is a lot of times when companies come, it's like, "I need to double my conversions. I need to do this pipeline." Da da da. People like this is why having somebody like Rob who actually like, well, let's talk about the attitudes part, because if that's not under microscope, then the other things may not even work, because it's like you're just going to be banging your head against the wall and it's just nothing's really going to change. In fact, they may even get more frustrated on the team because they're not getting there. So anyway, well, let's talk about that, because that is again, when I talk to my clients about this, their eyes go like, what? I've never thought about it. Or like the money weakness or emotional control. We're not like, there's so much we can go into the mindset, like what you're talking about between the ears. And that's why I love, like, they're not paying me for this, but that's why I love Sandler's, because it doesn't just teach you the techniques to be like better at sales. They teach you like how to actually expand your capacity to be a better salesperson.
It's like an operating system. It's not just a set of techniques.
And I still have my journal that I journal, and I still debrief my calls, and I still do all that stuff. But like, and I like how you give that example that no matter what you do, you're still gonna keep bumping up, like this billionaire example, which is a great example.
Right.
You'll still, like, as you're raising, like you'll still have more and more and more. Like there will never be, you know, like, oh, I'm done. I got my.
Right. It makes sense, right? Like the things that you do, your behavior is a product of the things that you think, feel, or believe, right? Like, I'm pretty ambitious. You'll catch me in the gym, but you'll never catch me running. Like, you won't catch me training for a marathon, right? And it's like, imagine if, I don't know, like you could teach me the techniques on how to run effectively. We can go to the running store and I could buy some really expensive shoes. I'll probably do the behavior for 2 or 3 days straight before I quit, because I hate it. I don't think it's valuable. I'm not committed to it. Like, I think you people are crazy that run on purpose if you're not running from the cops or from zombies or whatever. Good for you. Maybe I'm jealous, but it's like, when you use an example like that, you go, yeah, obviously you're the things that you do is a product of the way you think, feel, or believe. And the way that you do those things is also a product of what you think, feel, or believe. And it's like, oh, let's just apply that to the psychology of motivating and getting salespeople to do the right things, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that you got to remember too is you got salespeople on your team, you got ops people on your team, you got finance people on your team. No offense to ops and finance, you guys are like really important, but your daily behavior isn't very socially risky. Like you don't face a lot of social rejection. Salespeople face a lot of social rejection. Their daily behavior is very socially risky. So all of the conditions of being kind of a fearful social animal, which is what human beings are, come into play. And fear of rejection, need for approval, some of those things that you like shows up for us. Like, I don't care if your accountant has need for approval. Maybe it's actually good. I don't care. I don't care if your ops people have need for approval or what their relationship is with money. I don't care. It doesn't impact their ability to do their job. Sales, there's this big collection of things that we believe that can severely negatively impact our ability to do the job, and you just can't ignore it, right? We all have self-limiting beliefs.
Right. Well, that's a very important thing to kind of think about because and again, when somebody's hiring, they're mostly looking at the technique or the ability, like can they do the job instead of like what's in
Right,
between the ears, like would that affect
right.
anything. So let's kind of talk into nitty gritty of things. So, because I know we can talk about weaknesses, there's so much to talk about. Maybe we can do another thing about it sometime. But let's talk about the actual things that people really like on the bottom line, right? So when you work with clients, because you work with CEOs of companies, like what is a typical size that you typically work with, like between what and what?
It depends. Let me give you to answer your question, mid-market to some larger SMBs mid-market.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of corporate, but when you think of it's just a personal choice. I like the CEO to be the owner. I want the person we're investing kind of this blood, sweat, and tears together. I want them to have a lot at stake. Just kind of a personal choice, personal opinion, and that's where I'm able to have the most impact. When you look at ideal client, though, it has more to do with the leader of the organization than it has to do size of organization or what do they sell. It's like the makeup and the mindset and the way of being of the leader.
Gotcha. So what are the common things that people come to you? Like what are the most common problems that you see? If you can like two to three that you get to see most often.
Um, I mean, it's always results. Sales. Cool thing about business and the cool thing about sales is there's a scoreboard. Um, and if you have a decent controller or you know anything about numbers, like you balance your scoreboard once a month and you know how well or how poorly you're doing. So it's all about results, and people tag me in to increase sales and profit, top line, bottom line. The CEO's the thing that the CEO cares the most about, the two most important things to CEO, top line, bottom line. And then beyond that, it's normally I mean, it's pretty simple. Getting in front of enough opportunities, getting in front of enough new high quality opportunities, closing the opportunities that we get in front of at the margin that we need to be successful,
Mhm.
and then people, mostly leadership. So it's can we prospect? Can we close? Are my managers or leaders any good? Those are usually like if you look at every single conversation that we have with an owner or a CEO, those are the three stuff. I mean, there's other stuff there,
Right.
but those are the three starting
So
points for the
either
most
like
part.
the revenue is not growing fast enough as they want,
Right,
or they're not, probably because they're not closing enough, whatever the problem is, you go and diagnose and see what the issue is, or
right,
if they even have the right team. So basically, like there's some kind of pain that's related to the revenue not
right,
growing, and they are ready to fix that problem.
right.
Versus
Yeah,
like, oh, it's nice to have. Now it's like we gotta fix this
right.
more in that environment. Okay, so let's talk about the stories that I kind of dug onto you, like on in your testimonials with your clients. There's one that talked about that you helped them increase conversions, or you boosted the conversions 3 times in half the time. I don't know if you remember that story, but how did you do that? How, like, what's the fastest way to triple or double conversions? You don't even have to talk about that client, but in particular, like from your
I don't even
experience.
remember who you're talking about. That's a cool story, though.
I
I
think it
like
was like
it.
a law firm or something.
Okay. No, I think Mark, who sold marketing to law firms maybe. Anyway,
so what's the fastest way to double or triple conversions? Like if you had
you
to
ready?
yeah.
It's actually not me. It's how good are your leaders. So don't get me wrong. I would love to have an impact on your leaders, but one of the first things that if you ever hire me, you're going to hear is in our leadership, maybe before you ever decide to hire me, but definitely by the first leadership kickoff is, hey, you guys know who determines how fast we move and how successful we are? And they all kind of get the punchline before I get there. And it's like, you guys, right? Because like, no offense, what I do isn't brain surgery. Kind of good at it or whatever, but like it's not brain surgery. I'm going to give you behaviors, attitudes, techniques, ways of being, strategies, tactics. We're going to role play. It's simple, not easy. It's one of those simple, not easy things,
Uh-huh.
but it's like your ability. First of all, can I use a bad word here? Can I
Yeah.
say that?
Go for it.
I got one. All right.
If somebody
So
gets offended, they shouldn't really be watching. So.
your give a shit, the leaders give a shit is more important than anything that I bring. I could sit there and bring all the world's greatest stuff for hours on end. And if the leader has zero give a shit, it was a waste of time. It was a waste of my energy. It was a waste of the check that they write. So I'll be more specific in what I actually provide. But if you go, how can I take my organization to the next level from a sales standpoint? You got to look in the mirror or make your leaders look in the mirror. And maybe you are the guy or the girl. Maybe you are. Maybe your give a shit's high. Maybe your commitment's high. Maybe you're already an excellent coach. Maybe you could already hold people accountable. Maybe you are great at motivating the team. Maybe you know how to do debriefs. All those things that'll make you successful. But it starts with the leaders. It starts with them, right?
Wait, hold on. Can I interrupt? How do you know
Yeah.
if the leader gives a shit? Like, what's a big litmus? Like, because a lot of times CEOs want to fix the
Right.
problem, but the problem is the leader. Like, so what's the first thing like that somebody in their head can be like,
well, if the CEO gives a shit and the manager doesn't, that's okay because you can always replace the manager, right?
okay,
The CEO is typically not inviting me into a conversation if that's not there, because why would they waste their time?
okay,
Sometimes they'll do it to dance around because they got referred in and they want to pretend like they did the person who referred them a favor or whatever. But most of the time, if you're considering an outside person and you're investing time into that, you do care.
okay,
But to answer your question, okay, we have a manager, we have a team, and we're curious about their GAS factor. As you know, there's assessments where we could figure out how committed people are, but in the end, it doesn't take us really long to set some goals up, to set some key performance indicators up, to set up an accountability structure, to do some training, right? And if we have goals, key performance indicator, an accountability structure, the leaders are doing what they're supposed to be doing, like the CEO is holding the sales manager accountable. And then the manager is supposed to hold the sales team accountable. And then let's say the sales team is supposed to make more prospecting calls, right? And you get back together in a week or two, and everybody either did what they're supposed to do or they didn't. And at that point, they're making a choice, right? And if people choose not to succeed, or people choose to force you to help them figure out that they should resign, I mean, that's their choice. So it's just most CEOs that I talk to have good hearts, and they go, hey, I just know in my heart of hearts, I haven't given my people exactly what they need to be successful. I don't think that I know how to give them exactly what they need to be successful. That's what you're here for. And I'm like, great, because I think I can, for in most instances, get your people what they need to be successful. And then whatever they choose to do, then your conscience is clear.
okay,
If they choose not to do it because they're not committed, if they choose not to do it because they have need for approval, whatever reason, if they choose not to do it, they choose not to do it. And that's essentially a resignation letter.
gotcha.
And then
Right.
you can figure out what to do next.
So that's an easy way to like litmus test, to see if they do what they say they're gonna do, and if they don't, then that's on you what you're gonna do with that.
Right. So if they don't have a real clear behavior plan, if they don't have a real clear, this is exactly what you need to do every day to hit your goals, and here are your goals, and here's the key performance indicators, and I'm holding you accountable like weekly accountability meetings. If that stuff's missing, as a leader, you probably should feel a little guilty. You don't know yet. You haven't given them everything they need to succeed. If once all that stuff there, especially if you're getting coaching, the leader, you're getting coaching from a professional who's done this before, and they still choose not to do it,
Okay.
it's
So
off you, not on
that's
you anymore.
that's the first thing. Give a shit. Okay. Then to double or triple your conversions, once you know they do, then what? Like what's the formula?
I don't want to repeat myself, but the win fast, lose faster when you're trying to double.
Okay.
If you're trying to double, you need more time. You can't buy more hours in a day. So you need more time. So you need to be more efficient. And so you need to stop bumbling around with stuff that's never going to close or never going to pay you. Or when it does pay you, it wasn't worth the time that you put into it to get to the number that you got to. So you're going to get rid of stuff that you're not going to win. As soon as you can get rid of it, the stuff that you're going to win, you're going to be more effective at facilitating decisions, helping them get to the yes that they're eventually going to get to faster than they would have. And now you have a rebate of time to go hunt for more business, have more discovery meetings, ask for more referrals, whatever else you could do to get to double your pipeline and
So
double the quality of your pipeline.
so basically, if when they have their accountability set up and they know how many calls or whatever they have to do, and then now you start looking at how many calls converting to this and this. So now you start looking at what the levers look like, and
Right.
then where is the problem, right? So if they're having lots of meetings but they're not closing, like you start digging into kind of each of those KPIs or each of those
Right.
indicators and understanding like what the problem is.
Yeah. And you start with the easiest to fix, highest leverage. So, I know not many people make cold calls anymore. People don't answer the phone as much as they used to, but it's just an easy kind of behavior to get to. So if we talk about cold calling, if you want to double your cold calling effectiveness, you could double the amount of calls that you make. And I know people go really double, and it's like, yeah, because you'd be freaking surprised how many organizations I get into, and it's like, you guys cold call, yeah, like how often or how many? We do like 50 a week, and I'm like, so you do 10 a day? Like, what do you do by 8:30 then? Like, what are we doing at 8:30 when we're done with our 10? You know what I mean? It's like most of the time the outbound number is pretty unimpressive, and you can get no better and just double your behavior, and the math will double your results. So that's usually a give me.
Right.
And then another give me would be effectiveness. Okay, so like if it takes me 50 cold calls to have 10 conversations, how could I have 20 conversations and 50 cold calls, right? And I'll use some Sandler parlance. We don't have a lot of time to dig into all this stuff, but if you don't know anything about pattern interrupts, you do a pattern interrupt, you're going to get way more first conversations. If your 30-second commercial is a freaking pitch about why you're so great and auto biographical information about you and your company, that's ineffective. If you switch that to a 30-second commercial, that's third party stories about pains and problems and challenges and impacts that you solve, that's more effective. So you could do, if we take the really easy specific cold call example paradigm, we could double the amount of calls, we could probably double our effectiveness. And if you look at, if it was Mark or whoever said that about us, I mean, it was, again, simple, not easy. This is a transformation. You can make it sound easy, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's like that kind of transformation. I mean, again, it's not, most people can't do it alone without some outside help, but it's also not rocket science, right? I'm not a genius. None of us are geniuses in this business. So
Well, sometimes it takes somebody like you to call people on their excuses or whatever. Like, well, it's not
that's true.
working. Like, what? Why is it not working? And like, you've got all this, credibility that you bring with you. Like, well, you should, because salespeople will give you lots of excuses. So
That's
that's
true. Let me go on a 2-minute rant about excuse making since you brought it
do
up. Because
it.
you're right.
It's one of my favorite topics.
You're right. If this fails, like if we go back to behavior, attitude, technique, one of the belief systems is that uh each excuse kind of has its own self-limiting beliefs, but if you are a person that makes excuses, so there's a spectrum, and on one side of the spectrum is like 100% responsibility, like the kind of responsibility that like the stoic thinkers want you to take for your life, where you're responsible for all of your results, you're completely responsible for all your results. And on the other side of the spectrum is there's nothing I could have ever done differently to impact any of these results. I'm just kind of a victim of my circumstances, right? And you
My
laugh, but
4-year-old toddler. It's not my
I've
fault.
had people say that out loud to me, right? And it's like the more that we get over to here, the more that we get over to why did I get this negative outcome? What impact did I have on this negative outcome? What could I do differently in a second iteration of this negative outcome? The better off we are. And one of the things that if you're a sales leader and you've been listening to this whole conversation that I want you to hang on and self-evaluate is what excuses are you tolerating? Because here's the thing. The nefarious thing about excuses is that they're always true, right? Like your people didn't hit their numbers because they got abducted by aliens. They're not like, boss, I would have hit my number, but I got freaking abducted by aliens. Like they tell you things that are real. They say the economy is a little challenging. Our competitor came in and undercut us. The prospect was kind of a butthead. Like they'll give you things that are actually true, but they're still excuses. Like this is stuff either outside of our control or that we didn't control when we had the opportunity to control it. So are you accepting excuses for weak or lack of performance? And if so, like that's a thing that the owner can own or the leader can own. Like what
Mhm.
excuses are we taking or how often are we taking excuses or what is my sales team or my sales manager's propensity or likelihood to explain away bad performances with excuses? Because this is one of those things, Olga, that infects even the best, strongest people, where their good heart, their empathy reflex makes them tolerate excuses. Like they kind of do it from a good position, but it's just like this is one of the things that like I see so often in great people, strong people that otherwise would get results. Is they're like, well, she said this or he said that, and it's like no. Right? No, let's not do that anymore.
So what do you recommend when you start? Because I know it's probably a lot more than we think it is. So like what if somebody starts catching people and they probably already know that they're doing that, like what's your recommendation to get rid of that? Like how do you build the
Number
culture?
one, number one, you make a decision to stop tolerating excuses.
And you just
You
call it as it is and say, hey, that's
you
on.
buy that decision, you go, okay, hey, I've been tolerating excuses, I've been accepting mediocrity. There's a cool finding on the assessment that we use, right? That says
Mhm.
accepts mediocrity, doesn't accept mediocrity as a leader. And and I rarely get in front of a leader and say, "Hey, the assessment says you accept mediocrity. Do you disagree with that?" They almost always go, "That's fair." I mean, they almost never they don't know why or how they're doing it, but they go, "No, I'm accepting mediocrity. That's why you're here. That's why we're in this conversation." Um, so buying the decision to stop it, I'm going to stop tolerating excuses. I'm going to stop accepting mediocrity, even if not for my own sake, because it's bad for my people that I allow them to make excuses to explain away bad performance. And then I'll give you the real quick one-sided coaching role play. So you tell me, hey Olga, I noticed that you didn't achieve your goal for February. That's the third month in a row. I know that our last pipeline meeting, we were confident that we had what we needed in the pipeline for it not to close. And it's like, could you tell me the story? What happened? And you're going to say things like, well, at the last minute, our competitor came in and undercut us. There's weird stuff going on in the air with tariffs.
The
People are
economy
just
is doing
nervous.
right.
Right, right,
Economy
right.
is
And you're
this,
going to say those things.
right.
And I'm gonna go, okay, no, and don't get me wrong. And by the way, you guys, I don't fight with the truth. And I go, no, I don't doubt that all that stuff played a role in you losing the business. Can you think of anything else? And you go, no, that's really it. And I go, well, here's the problem: is that you didn't give me anything at all that you could impact, or you didn't phrase those reasons in a way that sort of consider your ability to impact, right? And a good salesperson that's coachable, trainable, that's open-minded will go, oh, yeah, you're right. So I noticed that nothing that you gave me was anything you could influence, or you didn't phrase it in a way that considers your ability to influence it. Oh, you're right. Maybe. And it's like, so why don't I'm going to ask the question again and think of it that way. Well, the competitor came in, but we have marketplace advantages that they don't have, and I just don't think the prospect was considering that when they made the decision. Perfect, great reason. So when we back up to a conversation that you had, where could you have made that happen? You know what? Probably way back in the discovery. Perfect. How could you do that? Right? You just like any coaching scenario, it's just asking questions to help them uncover when when it happened, why it happened, how to prevent it from happening again. So that's it.
That's a fascinating way to get rid of excuses over time, for sure. So like
Right.
reframe it that way in the one-on-one and make sure that
Right.
they're not bringing that up. Fascinating. So when you start working with clients, and we already talked about that, you can bring the best sales training in the world, but if you don't know what you're dealing with mindset wise, you don't know if you're training somebody to run a marathon or weightlifting, or like you don't know what they're going to do because you don't know what the mindset is like. So how would you, clearly you're assessing the team, right? You're using assessments to, is that one of the first things you do when you start working with somebody? Is
Yeah,
it
benchmarking. Benchmarking makes sense for almost anything that you can benchmark. If you go, hey, I'm going to lose some weight, what's the first thing you do? You step on the scale and you benchmark your starting point, right?
right, right.
Hey, I'm going to increase my bench press. Cool. What's my 1 rep max right now? Let me benchmark my one. Hey, I'm going to increase my net worth this year. I'm going to make more money this year. Let's benchmark your net worth. Let's benchmark how much money you made last year. I'm going to be a better father. Let's benchmark where you're at right now. A little more challenging thing to benchmark, but let's benchmark it. So yeah, you're right. Any kind of important goal that you're chasing, if you can benchmark, you should. Right.
And
And this is no different.
and then so you're using assessment, but for those people that obviously if they need that, clearly they should come to you and you'll do that. But those that are listening, is there an easy way to do my benchmarking without assessing people? Kind of what do you recommend if
No, because you want to trust a third party that has no opinion of your people, that's completely objective, that can give you hundreds and hundreds and hundreds or thousands of data points, with the least amount of pain, energy, and effort possible.
gotcha.
And you just can't do that without. I mean, we have nowadays, it's obviously computer administrated, like web portal administrated assessments, where the data is calculated and calibrated by lines of code, right? um and if it's not worth everybody on your team spending 45 minutes in front of a computer screen, and if it's not worth x thousands of dollars to create whatever then you're
Yeah.
not taking anything seriously
Right.
anyway, and you're not going to really change anything.
Okay.
So
So
you might as
so
well just
in
assess.
9 years that you've been doing this, you've dealt with what, hundreds of customers at this point?
I don't know.
Companies.
Doesn't yeah, whatever, dozens maybe.
Lots. I mean, you're not talking
Yeah.
about one or two. You've got a bunch of data points.
Right. Right.
So what do you see like once you come in and start assessing people, that are the companies that are not meeting goals, that are watching us right now, right? So they're getting assessed. Like, what do you see is it the wrong team? Is it that like, is it the wrong, the lack of process? Is the lack of accountability? Is it everything? Like, what are the common like one to through three, like, I don't know, reasons why they're not hitting their goals once you get them assessed?
All of that. I've thought about this a lot. I'm not really sure why this is true, but salespeople and sales managers generally stink as a field. Generally, like we are a low performing group of people. Like, we miss quota and we don't coach our people the right way. Like, I don't really know why that's true. I'm kind of curious. If anyone has a theory, let me know. But sales teams miss goals, salespeople miss goals, sales managers uh, miss opportunities to coach and do accountability and motivate their team. We explain away our lack of performance with excuses. And so, like, when you say what can everybody, what could people work on, it's usually like more stuff than we can get through in a initial meeting. And so typically that first conversation is about what's our highest like, by then we know what the goal is
Mm-hmm.
and what we're trying to get to. And it's like, okay, what's our highest leverage opportunity that can provide a quick return? What is that going to be? You mentioned process. It's usually process. It's usually the way that the leaders interact with the sales team. There's usually not enough or any good accountability. There's usually not very good coaching happening. There's coaching happening, but it's usually not very good. You try to work on that. Um, and then there's some pretty simple methodology, some pretty basic methodology things that you want to get going. Those of you with who know anything about Sandler, we want to set better expectations with an upfront contract for every single conversation. We want to agree on the outcome, the way the meeting is going to end in advance. We want to, before we ever dream about presenting or proposing, we want to uncover a compelling reason why this person would ever want to work with us. And that compelling reason ideally is based in pain. It's usually rooted in a negative emotion that has a major impact. So it's like those sort of basic consultative selling things
Mm-hmm.
are usually not being done, or people think that they're doing them and they're just not doing them very well or very completely. So it's
Interesting.
usually just those things which you would kind of consider low hanging fruit, but it's normally there's plenty of leverage in just those simple things there.
What's like the transformation story that comes to your mind that I don't know, maybe your favorite one or the most recent one that you can kind of share without obviously any confidential stuff, but like that
Yeah.
they did all of this, this is what happened. Like how does that work in practice?
Well, honestly, the best stories for us. So selling, as we talked about, we talked about your belief systems and how there's social risk. We haven't talked about anyone's self-esteem or self-concept. So someone with a high self-esteem, self-concept will always outperform the same person, same skill set, lower self-esteem, lower self-concept. It's actually one of those elements that's pretty predictive. People that feel good about themselves, have a high self-esteem, self-concept, will outperform other people, even other people with better skill sets or more experience, for a lot of reasons. There's a lot
Yep.
of reasons. And so when you go, what's your favorite transformation? And it actually doesn't have to do with money. It doesn't have 7 or 8 figures behind it. It's those times where you don't set out to deliberately improve someone's self-esteem or self-concept, but that's a byproduct of the work that we're doing together. And when people are saying, my life is better because I feel better about myself, um, because of the skills that we've worked on together. Like I have a higher self-esteem, I have a higher self-concept. And so to me, those are the stories that are the most impactful. And then that goes, I'm teaching my kids how to believe in themselves more because now I believe in myself more.
Yep.
So to me, if you said what's the best part or can you characterize, it would be it would be a story like that. I mean, no doubt.
But because that usually always should be leading to the bottom line increase as well.
Right. They happen together.
Right.
They don't happen independently for sure.
So
Sure.
can you share like any transformation story where the revenue has increased or whatever the CEO came to you for? Because a lot of times they come to you for that, and then this all happens as a byproduct, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this, you're making impact on both without them even understanding that that's what's happened. So like, what are you proud of, or like that you can share with us?
My favorite, I got a couple of these. My favorite is when you walk into an organization and someone's really smart and they have everything figured out but sales, because that happens a lot.
Uh huh.
And it's always a little bit of a fight up front because they go, we're really smart, and they have the right to think we're really smart. We figure most things out on our own, and we're really successful without you, and we'll be successful even if you don't impact us. Right? Those are the organizations that are the most fun because they're sales. There's so much like human psychology, and so much of it is counterintuitive that you could figure out a lot about ops and finance by being really smart and being intuitive. Sales, you tend not to be able to get there. And so it's the people who are really successful can't quite figure out sales, and then you come in and you help them figure out sales because they got strong leaders and they got great people and it's all cultural, and they're drilling. You leave the room and they're freaking drilling all the stuff that you just taught them, so they're getting better when you're on your ride home, all of that stuff. Those are my favorite. And I can think of a couple accounts where you combine the two. I really like account managers, believe it or not. I really like post sale people that I get to train. You normally start with the sales team, and then they go, you know what? A lot of this would work on our account managers because they're having conversations that influence renewal decisions,
Mhm.
influence upsell decisions, roof rent. And I really like account managers because they always don't see themselves as salespeople, and they always think that sales is like a dirty word and that I'm going to come in and help them apply pressure to people. And when they figure out, no, like you can be yourself, even if you're shy or weird or whatever, and you don't ever have to put pressure on people. You have to take some risks and ask some questions and challenge and push back. And a lot of times those things will work in tandem. Really smart company, impact people that don't consider themselves salespeople that never thought they'd be working with you in a way where you're helping them feel better about themselves and improve their work performance, grow their self-esteem, all of that. Those are the best ones.
But so it's like the whole thing. It's not just your hunters. It's not people that make calls.
Right.
The whole sales organization. So one of the things that I saw a common theme when I looked at your testimonials, all that stuff, that a lot of times people talk about that you help them surpass annual sales by mid-year. So you're the some I'm sure it's not a rocket science, but how would you
Right.
what do you I mean we kind of talked about this a bit, but like how would you like what's your secret sauce when you help companies kind of hit their goals? Because we're what in March, it's
Right.
mid-March, and
So
I guarantee you there's a lot of people who are listening, they're like I would love that. So like
right.
what's your secret sauce in that?
So number one, buy the decision. So if you're an organization who has historically not made goals or exceeded goals or tolerated mediocrity, as of now, you're the opposite, right? The decision starts first, right? Like Michael Jordan decided he was the best player on the planet before anyone else agreed with him. And he
True.
wasn't yet by the time he decided, and then he became that because that was his vision, right? So you buy the decision first. Everybody has their why, right? I won't. I mean, there's a lot of books with the word why in the title. I won't spend too much time here, but you have to have kind of the SMART goal thing figured out, and everybody has to have their why, and the why has to be real. So if you hit your sales goals by the end of June and everybody on your sales team makes $150,000 a year, you can't go to your sales team and go, "Hey, do you want to make $150,000 this year?" Because everyone, of course, is going to go, "Well, hell yeah!" But that just means they would bend over and pick the bag if the bag was. Then you got to go, "Well, why is that even important?" And if they don't have a great answer, well, because I need to invest in this, or because I'm saving for college, or because then they're not going to go take the risk. They're not going
Right.
to go do the hard, out of the comfort zone behavior. And so, like everybody on the boat has to have the why. And by the way, if you go, "Hey, would you like this outcome?" and they say yes, that does not count. You didn't do your job, because no one's going to say no. "Hey, would you like a raise this year?" I don't know. Probably, they're
Right.
going to say yeah, but then you got to go why, and they've got to have a good reason. So everybody's got to have a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have their reason, and you don't know how to do comprehensive goal. Like you got to do some of that. And then once that's in place and you go, cool, we bought the decision, we have our why, build a plan. It's also kind of crazy to me. Like I'm not the most obscene numbers person, but I'm a little numbers. And if I don't have the path built in numbers, I can't see it. Like how the hell will we know how we're going to get there if we don't have the
Yeah.
path built? And by the way, the path for salespeople is not just revenue. Hey, I need you to sell $50,000 in April. It's I need you to sell $50,000 in April. To do that, we're going to write $100,000 of proposals. To do that, we're going to have 8 final yes/no proposal meetings. To do that, we're going to have 24 discovery meetings. To do that, we're going to ask for 53 referrals and try to get quality level number 4 referrals. Right, all the way back to the behavior plan.
So
And then you're going to count.
the cookbook has to be very clear,
Right,
and everybody has to be on board in terms of what
right.
that looks
You
like.
can't you can't get out of bed and sell $500,000, but you can get out of bed day after day after day, even when you're unmotivated, and ask for 3 referrals, make 10 cold calls, attend 2 networking events. Like they need to be successful every day, and we need to start stacking good days. And you can't do that unless if we've just like daily success isn't so like you can't get out of bed and go, how I'm gonna sell $500,000.
Yeah, no,
There's
that's
no
too vague.
clear work ahead of
Right.
you to
Yeah.
do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So anything else on that before I can ask you the last question?
I think that's it. I think it's good.
Because we talked about playbooks today. We talked about kind of how do you get to your revenue, before the whatever June, July. If you do what Rob said, you're on good track. We talked about how to triple and double conversions. Now, the last question I usually like to ask is that, is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't, that you wish more people would ask when it kind of comes to fixing the revenue problem?
I don't know. We got to talk about all my favorite stuff: excuse making, the success triangle, benchmarking, coaching, accountability. I don't know. I think we got to talk about all the stuff that really matters.
You know what? The last
We
one
did.
that just came to me that I get to talk about all the time. My industry is different. I hear that all the time. Like, we are in this industry, it's not gonna work. We're in this industry, it's not gonna work. And I try to be very gentle and polite about it, and like we talk about it and ask questions. But
Okay.
what do you say about that? Like when people say it works in this, but it's not gonna work for us. Like what is your, and I'll let you go after this.
Well, the first thing that we know is that that's a silly excuse,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yep.
So I always know that it's an excuse, and it kind of depends on when that happens in the process and how strong my bonding and rapport and relationship is. Because if a client or someone that I knew really well said that to me, I would go, try again, right? Try again. If it's someone that I knew a little less well than that, I would go, hey, what would that sound like if you rephrased it and you weren't making excuses?
Right. Okay.
Right. And if it was somebody that I just met, I would go, tell me about that. Your industry is different. Tell me about that. And pretty soon, I'm probably 4 or 5 questions away from them accepting the reality that, because
Gotcha.
they're probably going to tell me a story of, we don't know how to prospect. We don't know how to ask great questions. And I'm like, wait a minute, Olga, I'm trying to understand why any of that's industry specific, because
Gotcha.
it doesn't sound industry specific to me.
Yep, that's another.
Yeah.
If you caught yourself thinking about it in your head, that's probably you're catching that excuse
Right.
excuse thing right there.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
Well, listen, I enjoyed it so much, and I hope you come back at some point later. But would love having you on the show. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And if
Thanks.
you, if anybody's listening, like I mean, like Rob said, you got to have that third party perspective to look at your team. So if you're not getting results, like Rob is the guy. I've watched him work his magic with all kinds of types of clients and industries, and he is the man. So where can they find you?
Um, we should probably put my email wherever this is going live. My
Yep, on
email,
LinkedIn. It's on
Rob.
LinkedIn.
Okay, yeah. So it's Rob. It's email is probably easiest. Rob@Lucian.com. Lucian is LUSHIN.com. You probably tag me on LinkedIn here,
Yep.
so you can DM me on LinkedIn or make a comment under the thing. But that's probably the easiest way to do that.
Do that. All right, Rob. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time,
Cool.
and we'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Olga. See you, everybody.